I'm just going to record a quick little solstice video. This is me outside of my desk. And yeah, I've got some notes just on the astrology coming up of the season. But firstly, I wanted to do something for the solstice. And then thinking about this lecture, I was thinking, like, why do we care about the solstice at all? I mean, what's the point? And we can celebrate the sun, but just even thinking about how the sun is constant. It's older. It never ceases. Sometimes we want it to last longer. Sometimes we want it to go away. We're complaining that the sun is too hot or the sun's not around enough. We're complaining about the weather. It's all based around our solar relationship. And so we have this cantankerous relationship with the sun. We're never satisfied with it. But those brief moments we do honor it. And it's these moments of tropical shift with the sun, of the tropical shift from Pisces to Aries, from Gemini to Cancer, from Virgo to Libra, from Sagittarius to Capricorn. Those tropical moments when the sun really shifts its position in the calendar. And why do we celebrate it? Well, it's a reminder of our own clock, of our own cycling, of our own shifting, of our own journey in this wheel of life, of the cycle of samsara. And so I think that we celebrate the sun because it reminds us of our own mortality, that we are still alive, that we have made it this far. It mimics our own journey of fluctuation. And if we look back at the historical context of people honoring the sun, it's the sun's movement that it's returned. And, in the 5th century, it was, returning to make sure that they lived for another year, that their crops were going to grow, that their animals were not going to die, that they would have enough heat and sunlight to survive another year. So it was way more animalistic. It was more of a basic survival. And if we use astrology now in our modern age, we have this assumption that, of course, it's going to come back because it always has. And maybe we don't have to honor it or mark it because we assume that it's always going to be this way. But yet, in modern time, which every generation thinks that it's living in a time that is worse than before, that things have never been this bad. And granted, there are some really radical seismic shifts in structures and industry and foundations that we have depended on and complained about, but for better or worse, they're dissolving, they're being shaken down, they're being reimagined. And the steadiness of the fluctuation of the sun, the steadiness of knowing that it's going to be at a certain point at a certain time of year, and that it by being in that place at that certain time of year, it gives us this comfort of stability of a pattern or a structure. And astrology is all about celebrating the patterns and identifying the patterns. And so we celebrate solstice now as a reminder to reintegrate that connection to natural cycles, because the natural cycles are the ones that we actually can depend on, not the cycles of structure that we create through politics or even religion or family tradition. Those always crumble away. The story that continues to go forward and repeat itself is the story of the stars. It's the oldest story that we have. It might have changed, with cosmologies of different cultures, but it is the one that has survived. So happy solstice. I'm going to share my screen just so I'm not just looking at my own face up here. I have up here for my location, that's this right here. So the ingress of the sun is going to happen tomorrow night, my time, about 10:40 p.m. my time in Asheville, North Carolina. Friday, June 20th, the sun is going to 0 degrees, 0 minutes Cancer. that ingress of the sun going into that first degree 0 minute Cancer is tropical. Cancer is the solstice point. The opposite end of that, when the sun goes to 0 degree 0 minute Capricorn, is the solstice point for the wintertime in the northern hemisphere. Those 2 points are when the sun is either climbing up or beginning to climb down. And so this movement of the wheel, of the cycles, the shape of the wheel, the solar disk, all of that was coming to mind when I was thinking of how to place yourself within the wheel of time, within the wheel of the year, and to mimic the journey of the sun in the wheel of the year. And so what I was thinking of was where I live, we call it the Mountain State Fair. It's just a very small state fair, rural state fair, but we have a Ferris wheel, which is usually ubiquitous with pretty much any sort of traveling fair of sorts. It's not really circusy, but sometimes it feels that way. Speaking of wheels, I have this wheel that keeps falling in my hair, so I'm going to take it out. It's my little solar disc. So in thinking about the Ferris wheel at a state fair, and so I have a little visualization. You can close your eyes if you want, you can lower them down, but if you would just imagine it in your mind's eye, that you are walking up to a Ferris wheel, and it's in your local area, but it's a much bigger Ferris wheel than has been there before. And so you're walking up to it and you're curious because it's all lit up and it's pretty and it goes really, really high in the sky. And you imagine what the rest of the park, what the rest of the fair is going to look like once you're up at the top of that. And it's a gentle ride. It is steady. It never really stops. So you walk up to it and there's no attendant there. But people are getting on and off on their own. They don't need anybody to show them. It's kind of like if you've ever been on a ski lift. You can just walk up and plop yourself down as the seat moves and you ride right up. And so you think, what the hell, I'll do it. I like Ferris wheels. It's a kind of a time from before, even 100 years ago, they had the Ferris wheel, and it's kind of the symbol of a lot of fairs. While there's modern rides that make you, want to throw up, or you actually throw up, or, there's speedy cars, or there's comical characters. The moving wheel in the sky that is illuminated even during the day is kind of the sigil of the celebration of going to a fair. So you walk up to it and you are a little unnerved that there's nobody there to help you, but you just walk up to it. You see people get off a chair and you just walk up to that chair and you just sit down and the chair moves. And that first sitting of the chair, you scoot back because you realize that there's no safety bar, there's no seat belt. You're kind of on your own. You kind of get locked in just with your own gravity. You scoot back and you kind of nestle in. If you're with someone else, maybe you sit a little closer to them. But you're sitting there and you're pretty tight. And imagine that Ferris wheel as the bottom of the wheel. And the house system in astrology that I practice, that fourth house is that first seat that you sit in. You've made the choice to sit in the chair, you sit in it, and you're in that fourth house. On the screen, if you look, there's the fourth house right here for the solstice chart. The moon and Venus and Uranus are in this fourth house. That's the entry point that you sit down. And you sit and you're immediately just making sure that all of your safety needs are met. And you sit back and you start to go forward and you lift off the ground, and you're still pretty close to the ground, but you're definitely on the ride. And you can look and you see where you just were walking, and it seems like it's okay. You can recognize the things around you. You could technically jump off if you wanted and still survive, but you're kind of excited and just surveying the land. And if you imagine that in the astrological sense, you have moved into the third house. That's your locality. That's things that are somewhat familiar, that are still pretty close to home. It's still pretty early on in that journey. But again, the wheel does not stop. It keeps moving forward. And so you move a little higher up into the ride. And in the chart, this would be the second house. Now, by the time you get to this point, you are definitely off the ground and you may not be able to see it very well. You can't see what's familiar. You're kind of seeing what's just beyond. And so maybe at this point you're getting you're kind of calculating, what you would do if you fell, because again, you have no seatbelt, you have no bar. You're excited. You're excited to see what's ahead of you because at this point, there's no going back. This is that second house energy of ascending to that middle point. So when you're at this middle point now, you're at like the far end. This is the eastern horizon in the chart. This is the first house in the chart. And you can see very far ahead. You can't really see what's below you. You can't see what's about to happen, but you can really gauge the rest of the park, at least where you're facing right in front of you. And there's an excitement. And you are fully on the ride now. And you are equally as above the ground as you are from the top of the ride, the top of the Ferris wheel. And in the Wheel of the Year, this is the spring equinox. This is the Aries 1 point. This is the climbing up. Like you were halfway up the ground, but you're going up. You still have the apex to reach. This is that first house. And then you start to go up, but you're kind of going back a little bit. You're still going upwards, but now you can't necessarily see what's below you. This is the 12th house. There is a little bit of anxiety and fear that can come with this house. And the position where you're at on that Ferris wheel is you're on it. You can still see pretty far, but you can't really see the ground. And you're afraid to look down at the ground because that momentum could bring you to injury or death. So you're kind of in this liminal space of, where am I? Nothing is familiar. Yes, I can see out, but I can't really see what's important to me. What am I supposed to do? And you move back again. You're up in this part of the 11th house of the chart. And at this point, you're almost to the top. And maybe you've let go of some of those worries and anxieties and not being able to see the ground because you remember like, oh, I'm riding up still. I want to see the top. And this is exciting because now I get to see really high up, but I still have more to go. So there's this anticipation of reaching the pinnacle. And then you do reach the pinnacle. This is the top of the chart. This is the 10th house in an astrology chart. This is this moment where you're at the very peak. And this is the summer solstice moment. This is the Cancer moment of being fully up at the top. The sun has grown from the very bottom when you got onto that chair, risen all the way to that middle point where you were fully out and excited to go up. And now you were at the top. This position of being able to see down and see all that's around you, and you have made it all the way up here from taking that risk of getting on the chair to begin with. You're at the top. You can see all that's around you, and also you can be seen by more people because you were at this pinnacle piece. And the way that you were viewed and the way that you perceive comes from this 10th house. And from that peak, then you start to descend, and you're still, now you're going down, but you're facing now where you just once were. You're in this 9th house, and you might be still exhilarated from being at that pinnacle, being at that apex. And you might start to decipher, well, what does it mean? Now the adrenaline has run through of being in that 10th house. What does it mean now to be in this 9th? And to be in this, what can I glean from it? What sort of memory can I hold? What can I learn from it? And you start to descend even more into the 8th house, and you can't really see the top anymore. You can see that you're in this liminal space now of going backwards, but you don't really have a great view. And so this anxiety again of, well, now that ride is over, the top is gone, it's only downhill from here. And now I'm just looking into the mechanics of the Ferris wheel because I'm facing in. And you go in even further, and now you're halfway. And at the halfway point, maybe you can see through the bars of the ride. You can see that other midway point. You can see where you once were, but you can also see all of the other people that are on the ride. You have actually a really good perspective from the 7th house, from this middle point, from the rest of the people that are on the ride. You can see where you were when you got on. You can see now where you were at the top fairly clearly, and you can see at that middle point. This middle point here at the 7th house is like the fall equinox. at the 0 degree Libra point. You keep going though, because the wheel does not stop, and you go into the 6th house. Now you're kind of like assessing, okay, well, this ride is almost over. And what do I want to get out of it before it ends? You might, check to make sure that you've got your bag, and you might be doing some just mechanical stuff just to like make sure that everything is good. And it may not be as fun at this point because you're kind of like thinking logistically now. But then you get down to the 5th and you're about to get off. And so there's this last savoring moment of just enjoying it, enjoying that ride, enjoying this piece before you descend back down to the 4th, where you can choose to ride it again, or you can get off and go to a different ride. And this entry and exit of the 4th house does feel like that winter solstice point where the light is starting to grow. It's the darkest, it's the most reflective. And I use this visualization of the Ferris wheel to put or embody the experience of the journey that the sun takes at the winter solstice down here, symbolized by the energies of the 4th house. The spring equinox is the energies of the Aries, or the 1st house here. The top of the chart, the Cancer, when the sun reaches at the very, very top. In the 10th house, the top of that Ferris wheel, and then the Libra point, the fall equinox at the 7th house here. And I wanted to put that into a visualization to amplify the importance of finding the house and the topics that these transits of the summer are going to happen in. Because while we have the summer solstice in the Northern Hemisphere happening on Friday, June 20th, it's going to happen at 0 degrees Cancer for everybody. But where 0 degrees Cancer is for your natal chart, this is where you can focus the energy of the 0 degree Cancer, of this summer solstice, of this changing of the season, of this pinnacle being at the top of the Ferris wheel. Where you find it in your natal chart, that's how you actually put it into into context of your life. And the point of this talk was to put in astrology into a contextual piece. That astrology is not just stuff that happens outside of us that does not engage. It just simply mirrors what our lives are doing. It doesn't cause us to do anything. It reflects that we are doing it. And so to use astrology as a predictive measure, as divination to see what may come ahead, looking at a moment like this, and then layering it to add more light, to add more refraction into your own natal chart, hopefully helps elucidate what seeds are being planted. And I say seeds specifically because not just what's happening in the Cancer house with the summer solstice, but what's happening in the Cancer house in a couple of days after the summer solstice. And so I'm going to put this chart up here for my location. It's happening at 11:17 a.m. on June 24th. June 24th is St. John the Baptist Day, and I think in the UK they have St. John bonfires. Kind of really brings the season of the light of the summer solstice in the Northern Hemisphere, bringing that light, illuminating things, and celebrating the illumination of things. You have the summer solstice celebrations at the Serpent Mound in Southern Ohio. You have them at Stonehenge in the UK. You have all of these historical cultures celebrating the summer solstice. And while I love that, I feel like we have disconnected from those ancient traditions, but we still have access to do that. And so to give access to that connection is to find where you can put the summer solstice energy into context of your own natal chart. And so I wanted to blend the energy of the summer solstice with this moment here, June 24th of 2025 at 11:17 a.m. Eastern time. So that's -5 from UTC. The sun and Jupiter are going to be together at 3 degrees Cancer. And then the next day, the moon is also going to be in Cancer. The moon and the sun are going to be at 4 degrees. I'm going to keep this chart up because it speaks to both of them. Now, when any planet is conjunct the sun, meaning at the exact point of the sun, it's called a cazimi. And technically, a new moon every month is a cazimi of the moon to the sun. It's being in the heart or the throne room of the sun. And the sun holds all of the knowledge. It holds all of our memory of knowledge. And the moon gets a taste of that every single month when it becomes new, because it takes a month for the moon to go through a cycle. And at the new moon inception point, it is that dark time when the sun outshines whatever is within 15 degrees of it. But when it's exactly like this, when the moon and the sun are at exact degrees, it is darkness by so much light. And so this moment where the moon, the sun, and Jupiter are all very closely configured. The day before, Jupiter was exactly configured at 3 degrees. The day after, Jupiter is at 3 still because it's slow. It takes about 12 months to go through an entire sign. But the moon moves very fast. And so at this moment here, with the sun, moon, and Jupiter all together within that first few degrees of Cancer, we have kind of like this doubled up cazimi new moon. Now, why a new moon in Cancer is special? Cancer is the only sign that the moon rules by domicile. So the moon is at home in one place, and that's Cancer. So to have a new moon in Cancer, it happens once a year. And that magic or the energy of a new moon is to plant a seed that you want to see grow. But something to be grown in Cancer which is a sign that encourages encourages nourishment. The moon wants things to grow as it grows and wanes. The cycle of waxing and waning is a part of the moon's nature. And so at the seed point, at that dark point, for the moon and the sun to be together in Cancer, the sign that wants things to grow, it's an excellent time to plant a seed that you want to see grow. But even more so, Cancer is also ruled by Jupiter through the exaltation scheme. So without getting into the weeds, Jupiter really likes to be in Cancer. It's not its home by domicile. It's the place that it gets treated the most extra special. It's like the honored guest or the favorite auntie at the family reunion. That's Jupiter in Cancer. So for Jupiter and the moon to both be in a sign that they rule at that new moon point, it amplifies, which is something the moon and Jupiter do anyway. They both amplify whatever they're near. It amplifies this new moon seeding point. And so to have the sun enter Cancer at this point where the sun has reached its pinnacle and it's going to descend, we still have plenty of hours of daylight in the northern hemisphere from this. It's going to be descending until it hits that Libra point, but we're going to have so much sunlight, so much illumination, so much knowledge that the sun is being willing to share at this point with the moon and Jupiter together, to have that secret be whispered to both of them. The ruler of the sun right now, because the sun is in Cancer, is the moon and Jupiter. And so all three are kind of trading secrets. And the fact that it's a new moon means that it's in that dark phase. So it's not necessarily obvious to everyone. It may not even be obvious to you of what this is going to reveal to you. The way to use it, though, and this is the whole point of anchoring the solstice through the house system, and then now looking at the new moon and the cazimi with Jupiter. The depth of secrets that are contained within the seed of these moments, of these days. You can think of it from the 20th to the 25th. And really until the moon leaves Cancer. You have Mercury there too, which is a psychopomp. It's a traveler between worlds. It's a messenger. It's co-present with all of these. It's away from the sun enough where it's visible, so it's not combust or burned up. So Mercury is involved barely, but it's there. To understand or to have the opportunity to sit with what seed, what intention is being put into the ground. It's under the soil, it's under the ground. It may not be as obvious or visible to you of how it's going to be, how it's going to grow and flourish and blossom and be able to reap something of it eventually. But it's important to insert whatever will you have where you would like something to grow, and to encourage the growth for something good and not something harmful or self-destructive or against other people. This is potent magic time. And now when, after a few days, the moon's going to move away from the sun. It's going to go into Leo. It's going to be visible again. After it's a new moon, you start to see that tiny little crescent. So it starts to become visible. The secrets that maybe the moon gets at this point are going to become a little bit more obvious. And then after a while, Jupiter's going to get far enough away from the sun because the sun's going to move faster, where Jupiter then is going to be visible too. Jupiter will become visible, I think, in about 3 weeks from now. It's around the middle of July when Jupiter becomes visible. So Jupiter is going to rise just before the sun at dawn. And so think about just the idea of right before the sun rises. It's dark, it's twilight, it's magical, it's mystical. Like for me yesterday and today, it was very foggy. It just added to that cloaking of suspended mystical water. This moment of Jupiter and the moon being with the sun, but being in the dark or being secret. Once it starts to reveal itself, once Jupiter becomes that morning star, once the moon becomes a crescent, you start to glean a little bit more of what the mystery is and how you can implement it. Jupiter is going to be in Cancer for 12 months. So you have a whole year to work on what you want to see. But how to just blankly give you a suggestion of, what do you want to see happen from this new moon with the Jupiter cazimi? Look at the house that Cancer is for you in your natal chart. If you're Cancer rising, this is the house of self and the body and your own expression and all of the things that the first house has. I printed off this, I'll put the thing up. It's by Benabel Wen. She wrote this really great I Ching book where she hand wrote all of the meanings of the houses. She wrote character, temperament, and self for Aries. For the first house. She associates the houses with the 12-letter alphabet here, which I don't, but if you do, then you can use the descriptions of Aries for that. But character, self, body, expression, how you engage with your world. If you're Cancer rising, that's going to be held in the first house. I'm going to have my little cheat sheet here so I don't stumble over. If you are Leo rising, this is in the, let me do the flip. So if you're Cancer rising, this is in the first. If you are Capricorn rising, this is in the 7th. So maybe this is speaking to something that is happening to people around you. It might be that this seed is you creating a container to nourish someone else or to nourish something that you have in partnership with someone else. It might feel distant from you, but it could be, how do you want to collaborate with someone else? Do you want to have a partner in crime for something that is nourishing and beautiful? The keywords that we have for Cancer are associated with the body and like nourishing and growing. But Cancer is also a cardinal sign. So there's this adventurousness, there's this willingness to start. And the willingness to start in the house of relationships, maybe this is the blossoming of a new relationship. All right, so I'm going to go back to Leo rising. If you are a Leo rising, this is happening in your 12th house. So the 12th house is that moment where on the Ferris wheel, you started to have a little bit of that anxiety because you couldn't really see. You knew you were going up and there was a little bit of fear. The 12th house has that anxiety to it. It has this idea that, you kind of want to look down, but you're scared. And the suggestion for the 12th house is to be in that anxiety enough to like find new ways to breathe into it. It's like in yoga, the hardest thing to do is to get on the mat. And the next hardest thing is to learn how to breathe properly. And if you allow yourself to breathe through any sort of pain or discomfort or anxieties that come to you when you're on a yoga mat, if you learn to breathe through it, you can find that space, you start to crave that work, that deep internal work. On the other end of it, if you're Aquarius rising, this is in the 6th house. So this is like actual work. And maybe it's speaking to the rituals that you do that are maybe not necessarily as nourishing as you want them to be, your day-to-day routine to be more nourishing and to craft something and be willing to work really hard at something to make that grow. This could also speak to people that work for you. It's still kind of a relationship house of nourishing the relationships that you have with staff or with your pets. What is this? The house that's smaller, of animals that are smaller than a goat. This is also a house of illness. So nourishing yourself to avoid illness. And for the next 12 months to really work on the nourishing things, the things that sustain you and aren't astringent, but more milky in essence, not necessarily milk as dairy. All right, so for Virgo rising, Cancer is the 11th house. And the house joy schemes in Hellenistic astrology, certain planets find that they really prefer certain houses, and Jupiter prefers to be in the 11th house. It likes to work towards something. This is the part in the Ferris wheel where you knew you're about to be up at the top. You could see most of the park in front of you, but you were excited that there was still room to grow. And Jupiter likes being here. So what kind of nourishing mentorships and connections can you provide to other people, or can you seek out for yourself? It's also just a place to dream, like wildly dream. And for Virgo risings, to be ruled by Mercury, it's sort of antithetical to think big picture. You want to think about the day-to-day, how it's going to work. But this is your chance to don't figure it out. Dream big and then figure out maybe if you really want to keep, you're going to figure out how to make it work if you dream it, but you have to kind of dream it first. And so for the opposite, for Pisces rising, this is in the 5th house. This is the classic don't get pregnant during your Jupiter in your 5th house year. This is a great time to get pregnant, maybe with an actual human baby, if you are able to carry one, but pregnant with an idea of something that you find pleasure in. So this is anything that you want to produce. This is a true seeding point, whether it's actually getting pregnant or it's planting the seed of, this is what I want to create in my life. This is the things that I love to do. And I am brave enough to start thinking about how to do that, because by creating something that I love is a nourishing way to then bring this beauty forward within the next year. And it's important not to feel the pressure that you have to get it ready now in the next 5 days or even the next 6 months. You know, when the moon, which is new in Cancer, is going to be full in Cancer during Capricorn season. That's kind of how they swap back and forth. Jupiter is going to be in Cancer until June of 2026. You have this entire time to craft that. All right, let me spin my wheel. Libra on the ascendant. So this puts Cancer at the top of the chart. This puts Cancer at the very top of that Ferris wheel when it can see everything and how it can be seen. And a lot of times, Cancer at the 10th can be an uncomfortable place because Cancer is ruled by the moon. The moon reflects this light of the sun. And so to have Cancer at the top, ruled by the moon, it can be a dynamic energy of tension of lunar solar, maybe not wanting to be expressive, but wanting to reflect. And for Libra risings, especially, Libra is that reflector just by design. The sun exalts in its opposite sign of Aries, and it is fallen in Libra because there is less of an expression of will and more about reflection. And so that duality of wanting to express oneself, but also express oneself in partnership and reflection of other people is kind of doubled up with Libra ascendant and Cancer in the 10th. This is your time to shine in the places that you are seen as that one to bring nourishment in the place that you are seen, whether that's work or just your public self. This is like legacy building time. What kind of nourishing legacy do you want to create and sustain? And you have the next year to work on this. On the other end, Aries rising, this is your 4th house. This is that entry point where you sat on the Ferris wheel to begin with. This is that, where do you want to sit as that nest, that dark point? This can be just straight up your home. What does home mean to you? We expound on the beauty of a planet being exalted. And so we have Jupiter exalted in Cancer for next year, but one of the shadow sides is like that hyper vigilant nationalism, and that can be also placed in your own lineage of being super defensive and protective of your own lineage. and to plant the seed to honor all of the good work that your ancestors have done, and to also bring nourishment by dealing with any sort of harm that your ancestors have done, doing ancestral healing work, working backwards through time to forgive the harm that they have caused, and also to forgive those that have caused them harm. This is like very deep, beautiful healing work that you can work within your kind of the psychic realms that I see in the fourth house. Okay, so now we're going to Taurus on the ascendant. This puts Cancer in the third house. Just like the Jupiter finds his joy up in the 11th, the moon finds her joy in the third. And if you imagine on the Ferris wheel, you got on at that fourth house and you started to rise up and you could see what was familiar around you. You could see your locality. That's the third house. The moon likes to know what's going on. The moon orbits us. The moon is a reflection of the sun, but it is our moon, not the sun's moon. And for the moon to know kind of what's going around us, to nourish what your immediate environment is, this is like neighborhood mutual aid. This is setting up a food pantry or like a little free library box in your neighborhood. This is connecting with nourishing ways that you can connect with those that are immediately around you. Siblings are often found here. I like this just for small coven witchy work. For male or female, it's just that dark seed where Jupiter and the moon are hidden by all the brilliance. They're learning all the secrets. What secrets are being sown here to grow really beautiful, nourishing magic in the third house. For Scorpio rising, this is in the ninth. This is the belief. This is the meaning of when you were at the top of the Ferris wheel and you started to descend back. You had this reflection point of wanting to put meaning into all the feelings that you had by being at the top of the chart. House is that house of belief, and Jupiter up here. I love Jupiter in the ninth house. I love a seeding moment of nourishing and combining and bringing together and elucidating the secrets that are being revealed during this Cazimi and the new moon in the house of belief. This is my own personal placement, so I've spent a lot of time trying to figure out how Jupiter in the ninth can really help bring cohesion and forgiveness and compassion for all of the conflicting things that a person can hold simultaneously, and to really nourish the teaching that can be had in this ninth house. All right, so the final one is Gemini. Gemini on the first house. You have Cancer in the second. So the second house is like this house of wanting to exert one's will, wanting to support the first. There's an excitement on that wheel of the Ferris wheel of like growing to be where you can see the most. Cancer in the second is a house of skill and resources that you can learn and figure out of how to earn money. This is straight up a good entrepreneurial moment for any Gemini risings. And then for the flip side, for Sagittarius rising, this is happening in the eighth house. This is about the financial and karmic debts and bounds that we have with other people. So maybe this is happening tangentially to someone that you're in relationship with. But even finances aside, thinking about the anxieties and the fears that are associated with that eighth house. This is a part of the Ferris wheel where you couldn't really see anything. You could start to feel the anxiety come in. I like this house for occult work, for really turning to rationality and looking at what kind of magical seeding point, what kind of secrets can be found if I look at the connections that I have with spiritual masters or people that I admire, that somehow I have haunted or they have haunted me in life, whether it's relationships of that I have had with authors by reading their books. What kind of secrets can I glean from that? And how can I use that as a nourishment for the next 12 months to really deepen the nourishing relationships of forgiving people, of asking forgiveness from them. The eighth house is hard work, but you also get access to things that you wouldn't necessarily have access to if it was in a, quote, easier house. Okay, so that's my solstice, Cazimi, new moon notes. I'm going to take a drink, and then run through 10 transits for the summer, and then we'll close out. Okay. Firstly, I'm going to look at, actually, we went through 3 of them already. I've talked a lot about Cancer, but we are going to look at Gemini next, because it's happening next month. Is we have some action in the Gemini house. The first one is this blessing of Venus going into Gemini. Venus is at home in the preceding sign of Taurus and moves into Gemini on July 4th, right around noon, and bringing benefic activity into the Gemini house. Jupiter had spent a year in Gemini, where it is actually not well placed. It can amplify things. It can make things a little bit crazy making, but it disrupts things, and it's inventive and it's fun. But we're happy that Jupiter is now in Cancer. Venus now is the other benefics, the other one that kind of wants to work. Just like Jupiter wants to work together, Venus wants to work together. Venus and Gemini is going to be in here for, I think, all of July. Oops. So Venus goes into Cancer July 30th, so very close, almost all of July. We get a couple of weeks of Venus and Gemini. Things just go through Gemini very quickly. Gemini is a very sharp, quick, speedy sign, and Venus going through there kind of lays the way, lays this sparkly path for our next character to enter the Gemini scene, which is Uranus. Uranus is going to be in Gemini from July 7th through November 7th. And then it's going to retrograde back into Taurus. It's been in Taurus since 2018. It spends about 7-ish years in every sign. But it usually retrogrades over that threshold of a sign. So we're going to get this first prequel of what the larger Uranus and Gemini transit's going to be. It's going to move into Gemini April 25th and be there until 2032. April 25th next year until 2032. So we're going to get these couple of months from July 7th to November 7th of Venus, or of Uranus in Gemini. Venus is paving the way. And even though Venus is not in there for very long, I kind of like that she's opening the door and setting us up for this transit. Just a couple of thoughts. There will be much more information on Uranus and Gemini. We haven't had this since the 1940s. And there's lots of fear-mongering around it because during the 1940s, there was a big disruption worldwide. We had the Second World War. We had massive disruption in just the amount of casualties and death. The weaponry advanced far beyond what we were thinking that we were capable of. We had the atomic bomb. We had complete dissolution of countries. We had lots of mass migration. We had this disruption, and this massive disruption is what Uranus is famous for. Uranus in an air sign is famous for it. What gets my attention is that later on, let me see when Mercury goes retrograde. It's July 18th. So we have a few days before Mercury goes retrograde. And the reason why I bring this up is because the host of Uranus and Venus is Mercury, because Mercury rules Gemini by domicile. Mercury is over here in Leo at 15 degrees, exactly sextile Venus and Gemini at 15 degrees. So at the ingress point, usually the moment that a planet ingresses into a sign, it kind of gives a taste. It's almost like a birth chart. So I'll go back to this. When Uranus goes into Gemini, July 7th, this is the ingress chart for my location. It happens before dawn. You can see the sun is down here. The sun is rising up here. So it's a couple hours before dawn. We can look at aspects to Uranus. We can use this ingress chart because we haven't had Uranus and Gemini since the 40s. We can use this as like a natal chart, and we can glean or divine information from this going forward. And we'll probably go back to this ingress chart, but since we're on this side of it where it hasn't happened yet, to look at this chart and see, okay, well, what might happen? Can we get any sort of advanced warning? One, you can look at your own natal chart and see where Gemini is, to see where this disruption and this like unconventional beauty potential can come from. The aspect that Venus is related to is a sextile. I like to call it the honeymoon aspect. It's the first aspect that planets can make with each other. After they've been conjoined, they can't see each other, and then they are sextile each other. So there's this like, oh, what can we do? The what can we do nature of Venus in Gemini is here co-present with Uranus, disrupts things. So maybe the disrupting of things creates the potential of how can we make this work, of this ingress of these few weeks where they're going to be both together in Gemini. But this ingress chart, we have Uranus here at 0 degrees. It is sextile very closely Saturn and Neptune at 1 degree and 2 degrees respectively in Aries. It cannot see the Cancer house through aversion. It sextiles by whole sign its ruler, Mercury over here. It squares by whole sign Mars over here in Virgo. It is opposite the moon. It is trine by a few degrees Pluto. And then the nodes are kind of caught in the mix too, but not close enough for me to really even talk about. So this moment here, it's fairly spread out, and there's connection with all of the outer planets. So the outer planets are, now they're moving from water earth signs to fire air signs. So they're going to be sextile or trine each other for the next decades as they all kind of shift into these new paradigms of new signs, and their relationship with each other changes. Pluto, trine Uranus, and Venus here. Trines are flow and supportive, and the energies can go back and forth in air sign. It can be thoughts and communication styles and messages. The messages from Pluto to Uranus and Venus. I mean, it's like, do we want these two talking with each other? Maybe. The ruler of Aquarius is Saturn. Aquarius is hosting Pisces, or is hosting Pluto right now. Saturn is not in that great of a position. So I don't know what sort of information Pluto is disseminating down to Uranus and Venus. Saturn is also murky with Neptune over here, and it is squaring still fairly within a few degrees Jupiter. Jupiter is getting away from that square as fast as it could. So again, there'll be more on Uranus and Gemini, but for this moment, this is what the chart looks like. Okay, so then the next one to look at is the full moon in Capricorn. So while we have the new moon in Cancer on the 25th, 2 weeks later, we have the full moon in Capricorn. So a reflection point. The moon is reflecting the maximum amount of light from the sun. The sun is still co-present with Jupiter because the sun is still in Cancer. Jupiter will be there for a while. And the moon is not at home in Capricorn, but it can see fully this Cancer house because it is opposite. Aside from a conjunction, the opposition is considered the strongest aspect because they are tightly configured. And the houses of Cancer and Capricorn are tightly configured because they're always on this yin-yang axis of each other. The ruler of Capricorn is Saturn, who is over here in Aries. I can't speak. It is fallen in Aries because it is exalted in Libra. So the ruler of this moon is not in good position, but it can see its home and it can see its exaltation ruler. So again, just maximum reflection. And I feel like this moon here will reflect even more of the Uranus and Gemini story. It'll kind of give us a heads up of what to kind of look forward to or what to be aware of potentially coming, because that's what full moons can do. They can just really be like, this is the full picture. All right, so then the next one we have Mercury going retrograde. So I'm going to do this. On the 18th, so about a week after the full moon, we have a waning moon here, moon in Aries, the moment that Mercury over here in Leo goes retrograde. Mercury is going to stay in Leo the whole time during its retrograde. Back in the spring, Mercury was retrograde in Aries and crossed back over into Pisces. It's fairly common for that to happen. This is the only retrograde that Mercury is doing where it's going to stay in a single sign. Mercury is going to be retrograde here till August 11th. I like that it goes direct on August 11th because August 12th is a really rad day, and I like that Mercury is going forward. So we'll look at the new moon in Leo. That's happening July 24th, a full month, a full moon cycle after the new moon in Cancer. So we have this new moon in Leo, and Mercury is present. Mercury was present for the new moon in Cancer, but very far away. Mercury, the moon, and the sun all together here in the Leo house. Now, Leo had a little bit of the Mars retrograde last December. Leo hasn't had a lot of love or a lot of attention, except for the Mars retrograde last December, and then when Mars went through in the springtime. Actually, Mars just went into Virgo a few weeks ago. And so we haven't had a lot of attention or energy into the Leo sector of our chart. So you can look at the house that Leo rules in your chart, and you can look at this as the seeding point of expression. I say expression because Mercury is fairly close. Mercury is being burned up by the sun, and it's in this dark phase where you can't see anything because of the amount of sunlight. And so from that frustration of being burned up and not being able to express, I feel like it's going to be the impetus to express something. And that new moon moment, that seeding point to then design, what do I want to express in the Leo house? You can look at where Leo is and see where there might be frustration or a lack of being visible or lack of being heard. Your voice or your messages or communication may feel like they're not being taken seriously or being drowned out by other people's noise. Use this moment as a moment to seed of how you're going to have that change, because Mercury is retrograde. It's going to go back over in Cazimi the sun on the 31st. So a week later, it's moving into it where it will then kind of be purified. So this frustration point of the new moon, I think, is a good frustration that will prompt us to make change that we want to see in the Leo house. And then when it Cazimis the sun, so I'm going to do this a week later, Mercury will have been kind of purified a little bit of those edges, those kind of wild hairs are kind of trimmed to then create new growth. So we have this Cazimi, and then we're going to move a little bit into August. So the full moon in August is going to be August 9th. We have the sun in Leo, the moon in Aquarius. The full moon in Capricorn on June 10th and the full moon in Aquarius on August 9th are the first Saturnine moons that we've had since Saturn moved into Aries. And so I'm kind of paying attention to both of these to see how they express themselves, because when the ruler of a planet is not well placed, it can be frustrating, or it can be inventive. It can come out in ways that are unconventional. And as astrologers, we seek to kind of glean all of those anecdotes of how things are expressed, because it can just add nuance to how a planet can express itself. How does a planet like the moon express itself when it's in Saturn's temple, when Saturn itself is not in a great position? It's different when Saturn was in Pisces. It's very different when Saturn was in Aquarius or Capricorn. This is just a new way. This is, the astrology world, we say it's astrology good when something is like very unfortunately kind of written in the chart. And I'm not saying that the full moons are going to be like that, but I'm paying attention to the fact that full moons reflect all the light. And so there's a lot of illumination of what is happening. There's a lot of, like at high noon, when the sun is at the top of the sky, there's very little shadow that's cast. Similar to a full moon, there's lots of shadow still because it's stolen light. It's not the moon illuminating, it's reflecting back the light. But there's the amount of illumination in the dark space, the amount of illumination in that intuitive knowing sense that the moon has the capacity for is going to be changed because its ruler, its host, is not in a great position. Now, Aries and Aquarius can see each other by whole sign, so there is some communication, but it's almost like if the moon is reflecting like a story in the Aquarius house from the light of the sun and Leo, it may not be able to ask Saturn for much help because Saturn has its own thing going on. Saturn doesn't have money that you can borrow. Saturn doesn't have a good pair of shoes to walk back to help you out. It's like you can be aware of the situation in the Leo Aquarius house, but the host itself is not in a great position to offer aid because it's on its own journey. And so for that, I'm looking at the full moon that's happening when the moon is in Capricorn and then when the moon is in Aquarius, because the host is in this kind of compromised position. All right. From that, we go to August 12th. And it's an incredibly lovely day. We have in astrology the malefics, Saturn and Mars, and we have the benefics, Venus and Jupiter. And while there's fear mongering, there's also like overselling something. And Jupiter exalted, conjoined Venus, while the moon is in a water sign, seeing that both of them by whole sign is incredibly lovely. And maybe I'm overselling it, but I'm looking forward to this day. We have had plenty of hard times and difficulties with aspects and difficulties in our own personal lives and in the global scale and environmentally and politically and generationally, all these things. There's always going to be hard stories. We tend to remember the hard stories. I want to have something good to look forward to. And even if nothing tremendous happens on this day, I'm expecting it to flow. I'm expecting it to have some ease. This is happening at 1:30 in the morning, my time. So Monday, Moon's Day, the day before, the moon will be in Pisces. Pisces is ruled by Jupiter, and its exaltation ruler is Venus. So by whole sign, the moon can see its home. It can also see its exaltation ruler. Jupiter can see its home, and Venus will be able to see the moon exalting in Pisces. So there's the moon, Jupiter, and Venus in the water signs in a trine, flowing like water, flowing like a trine. I'm going to take this as a win, and I don't care if I oversell it. It can just be this dreamy moment. The reason why it's viewed as difficult is that we're still looking at a square from Saturn, especially in Neptune in the Aries house, but they are 13 plus degrees away. So it's not this hard square. Both Saturn and Neptune are retrograde. They're moving away from its square. Jupiter and Venus are moving forward. They're not retrograde. So there's a separation. There is kind of a good degree of separation from that square. There's also a square to Mars. So we have both of the malefics in square by whole sign house to the benefics. But again, they're 11 degrees away. And Mars, just like Saturn is not very well placed here in Aries, Mars is exiled in Libra because Mars is at home in Aries. So Mars and Saturn are opposite each other. They're in a tight tension with each other, but they're kind of like both wounded warriors, not able to be able to fight that well. Just let Venus and Jupiter have their day or have their evening in the moonlight, because I feel like this is a very beautiful day. Once Venus leaves Gemini and goes into Cancer, they're going to be co-present. So I feel like the blendings, and we can even look to see when that goes in. So Venus goes into Cancer July 30th. So we're going to have the Mercury Cazimi on the 31st, and we're going to have Venus in Cancer on the 30th. I love Cazimis. I love Cazimis just for the connection to learning what secrets the sun might be willing to give up. And Mercury is a messenger to come tell us, because Mercury can't keep anything to themselves. They have to tell us. But then Venus going into Cancer, that ingress point will be co-present with Jupiter. So basically the first 2 weeks of August, we're going to have these two together, and it's going to culminate and get bigger and bigger at the same time that Mercury is moving backwards through Leo. And we can look to see also when Mercury goes back and conjoins the sun. I think it's going to be later. It's in September. So we can look here. They're going to be conjoined together July 31st. Mercury's retrograde, so it's moving back. And then it will go direct, but it'll take time to kind of catch up with the sun again. So when it Cazimis again, the sun and Mercury are going to be in Virgo, which Mercury is at home and exalted there. It's doubly bona fide by being in Virgo. So that time when it's going forward through the sun at that Cazimi is going to be a really smart Mercury. This point here, it's in Leo. And so I feel like it's going to be more about that new moon in Leo with Mercury co-present, learning what that frustration and that inability to express itself and communicate. And this will be kind of that purification and working on that process and the next Cazimi, when it's in Virgo, I feel like it's going to have a different story to be telling. But this Venus conjoined Jupiter on the 12th, especially the 11th, because it's kind of like a full moon. It's like the leading up to the full moon feels kind of like the full moon story. And then the last one we have is actually the new moon that's happening in Virgo. So this last new moon, before the end of August, we're going to have this new moon in Virgo. We're actually going to have 2 new moons in Virgo this year. The next one is going to be an eclipse. It's 18 degrees away from this shape here, which is the south node, the lunar node. When it's within 15 degrees, it's considered an eclipse. So this is just outside of an eclipse. But we will have a new moon eclipse later on in Virgo season. I think it actually happens at 29 degrees. So we have the second new moon in Virgo is at 29.5. And then this one here is at 0 degrees, 23 minutes. So to have 2 Virgo new moons is pretty cute. There's the lunar cycle fluctuates. It's not as like the trains run on time, consistent solar calendar. The moons kind of fluctuate back and forth. And I just think that it's having 2 new moons in Virgo and an eclipse in Virgo during the Virgo season. I have notes on Virgo season, which will be a whole other story. And I'll just kind of wrap up with that. So in September, when we're fully into Virgo season, Saturn's going to leave Aries, go back into Pisces. Mercury's going to get home to Virgo and be exalted. Uranus is going to begin to get retrograde. There's going to be a full moon in Pisces while the sun's in Virgo. There's a lunar eclipse at that moment. The sun is conjoining Mercury in Virgo at the Cazimi. Mercury enters then Libra. Venus goes into Virgo. Then we have a solar eclipse in Virgo with that new moon. Then Mars enters Scorpio, which Mars likes to be in Scorpio. And the sun enters Libra, which the sun is not at home in Libra. So we have all this really radical dynamic shift. It does feel kind of like the locks and the chains all really get moved around in September. August, there's a Mercury retrograde, yes, but it's held steadily within the house of Leo. And then we have this really beautiful exalted Jupiter conjoined with Venus in the middle of the month. We have some Cazimis to deal with. We have this wild new wacky inflatable tube guy of Uranus and Gemini. We do have Saturn and Neptune in Aries, kind of confused, both going backwards. And we're ahead of eclipse season where we don't have kind of those faded moments kind of coming in. So yes, there's lots of change. As Jupiter gets away from the square to Saturn, which I'm going to put back to my location, we have, you can see Jupiter's here at 2 degrees Cancer. Saturn is at 1 degree Aries. So Jupiter's incrementally moving away from this square to Saturn. So there's kind of like more bright and shiny days of the Jupiter story, of the Cancer story, from the limitations or the challenges, the delays or frustration that maybe the Aries house has been placing on the Cancer house. There's kind of forward movement for it. So it feels like there's a sweet kind of stillness, even in the midst of the potential of the chaos that Uranus and Gemini could bring. There's like lots of eyes in a larger storm that we get to experience. I'm all about taking the wins wherever you can find them and enjoying it and using these moments of the summer solstice as really maximizing the light and inversely maximizing the illumination that we hold internally, because Cancer is ruled by the moon and it reflects light. And so being reflective and maximizing the sunshine that you have in your heart, and looking then to kind of fragment or prism that light into the Cancer house of your chart to be able to focus these transits in a more tangible way. And we went through the houses earlier, but I'll be writing more about Jupiter, the rising signs, and then my astrology collective, Astros Sophia Kairos, will be looking at the horoscopes for July. So you can look at that. I'll be sharing that channel too. I will stop my share. Thanks so much, everybody, for joining, and I'll see you around next time.